What do we really know about the brain? We know it's pink. We know it's clever. We know it's an anagram of Brian. We also know that it doesn't like being hit. So why would anyone lie about it? It's cinema's most concussive blooper. Whether it was in the Bangkok night sky, on a rock in the Albuquerque desert, or on the handle of a petrol pump, it's impossible to forget the first time you laid eyes on that clumsy trooper.
The moment I saw the Stormtrooper bump his head, I actually fell to the earth and was in awe.
Oh, yeah, he comes in and bam. But basically, the Stormtrooper who bumped his head in the movies definitely was an inspiration to me as to what not to do on set.
This man from Manchester, however, believes it to be a fake blooper, a flooper.
I'd say to him, you know, everybody thinks that was an accident and that they kind of forgot to cut it out of the film. A blooper, they call it. And he'd say, what's a blooper? And I'd say, I don't know, it's a silly word that's been invented. Well, clearly, it's deliberate because they'd have cut it out otherwise, right? All that money.
We know it's happened here, Elstree Studios, north of London, England, Earth, during production of the very first Star Wars film in 1976. But who was responsible for it? Do you know who did it?
No. Do you know who did it?
Nobody knows, it's a mystery.
Oh.
I'm Jamie Stangroom, human man, journalist-ish, mostly hair, and I'm on a mission to track down the Stormtrooper that bumped his head. Along the way, I'll discover multiple suspects.
Well, I knew there were pretenders, but all I know is it happened to me.
Ask this gentleman if he's got photographs on set with his helmet off to prove that he's actually there.
I'll speak to witnesses who worked on the film.
It was the best take in terms of the speed in which the Stormtroopers came out.
And there will be polygraph tests.
Polygraph is not saying it's him.
Finally, with the help of a jury, I'll attempt to unmask the true galactic idiot.
We're gonna break it down, we're gonna find out, man, who hit their head on that damn door.
London town, home to 9 million people, 300 languages, and 40 years of producing stormtroopers for the Empire. The galactic one. And it's here where my journey starts and eventually ends. To be honest, I barely leave the place. There I am, walking purposefully purely for narrative focus in the great outdoors, before taking my search to the less smug indoors where I stuck my head in the internet and found an area the size of Ireland, populated by two names claiming responsibility. Sci-fi convention regular Laurie Good and this guy, Michael Leader, who had even staked his claim via a vlog.
I was a stormtrooper on Star Wars and made my name because I was the one that banged his head and was voted the biggest movie blunder ever.
Michael Leader, one of BBC soap opera EastEnders' longest-serving cast members, where for more than 30 years he's played the man who brings the milk, the milkman. After cyber-digging my way into some pretty mysterious parts of the internet, I finally found a number for Leader thanks to his membership of the Laurel and Hardy Appreciation Society Southend branch. So far, so... ... bad. So Michael said that EastEnders don't let him do any interviews, and then he hung up. Now I contacted the BBC press office, who said that's not the case, and they'll let Michael know that they're happy for him to talk to me. But then I get another email saying that Michael just doesn't want to talk. He's literally put a video on YouTube saying it was him. So why won't he talk? I've got a good mind to go vegan. That'll teach him. Laurie, meanwhile, agreed to speak to me faster than Usain Bolt on a skateboard. So I put on something called a tie and went to meet my first suspect. Can you confirm your name?
Yes, my name is Laurie Good.
With credits in Doctor Who and The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Laurie was originally cast in Star Wars to play an alien in the iconic Mos Eisley Cantina scene.
I wasn't originally down to play that part as a Stormtrooper. Someone called Peter Jukes was. He cried off sick or had some reason why he couldn't attend, so I went along in his place.
Hang on, did you poison Peter Jukes?
No.
Stormtroopers were famous for missing everything they aimed at. I wanted to know how Laurie connected so accurately with that door.
I was aiming to miss, but I hit it. My mind was elsewhere, and I had diarrhea. And I'd just been to Lou and taken all my costume off, put it back on again. I wanted to go again. So I put in a shot, and I thought, oh God, I want to go to Lou again. And I was shuffling along and bump, hit my head. And no one said cut, so I assumed I wasn't in shot.
Did you get the costume dry cleaned afterwards?
No, I just left it there.
Interesting. Have you soiled any other iconic costumes?
No, that's the only time. Didn't do that one either.
So when did you find out that you might be this cinematic anti-hero?
As soon as the film came out, really. When we started doing the conventions and other people started claiming it.
Other meant Michael, people meant leader. I wondered what Laurie knew about my reticent fictional moo juice herder.
I don't want to say anything about Michael Leader.
Has he threatened you?
No.
Have you crossed paths?
Yes. Because it's up to him to, I don't want, it's up to him what he says.
One mention of leader, and Laurie was as comfortable as Donald Trump in a sombrero. So I took him out for an evening at the bumper cars to unwind, and we promised to keep in touch on Snapchat. With leader staying full-fat stum, I was left to assume that Laurie the Stormtrooper was my man. But much like his bowel movements, something didn't feel right. The case was at an impasse. For now. "12 months of silence later, and a BBC radio appearance unexpectedly brought another Stormtrooper claim from out of the Death Star woodwork.
Jamie Stangroom, who, as he remarked, wasn't born when Star Wars first came out, but is now so keen he's devoted himself to tracking down the less celebrated or even remembered members of the cast.
Yeah, I'm after the Stormtrooper that bumped his head. So I got an email from a guy who heard me on the show, and it says, yes, I was a Stormtrooper, and yes, I was the one who managed to bang his head. He adds that he went to drama school with Anthony C-3PO Daniels, and he thinks that the assistant director or floor manager was called Terry or Tony. With best wishes, Martin J. Reid. P.S. It really was me. The OJ trial only had one suspect. I now had 3. But things were about to take a more sinister turn. I got a message from Laurie. Laurie was right, and as far as the press were concerned, Michael Leader was the actor I was looking for. And despite that YouTube video still being the only evidence going for him and a new trooper in town, I still considered him a suspect, as I rode the TIE Fighter of the dairy industry in his honour. In what could be unfairly dismissed as a series of establishing shots, I left the city behind for the blue skies of Henley-on-Thames to meet my latest suspect. A town that's seen its fair share of famous residents over the years, from George Harrison to Dusty Springfield, both in danger of being outdone by some bloke claiming to be the Stormtrooper that bumped his head. After the news about Leader, I decided to meet Martin in a public place. Can you confirm your name?
My name is Martin Reid.
He may have performed for the Royal Shakespeare Company, but Martin's biggest claim to fame was playing sea captain and mascot of the Mighty Fish Finger, Captain Mofoing Birdseye.
We did several takes. I was astonished that it was kept in, so I obviously on that take didn't stoop enough.
Did you hear anybody else at the time claim it was them?
Not at the time, no.
So when did you realise that this had become famous?
Well, not until relatively recently. My daughters, who are quite young, know more about computers than I do, and she found that it had been around the world, this clip. But they knew because I told them the story many times.
What was that costume like to put on?
Fiddly. As I remember, it was bits, strapped or velcroed or whatever. And once you were in it, you had to stay in it, so you had to make sure you'd been to the loo beforehand.
Did you experience any unusual stomach activity on the day?
No. Why do you ask?
No? None of the diarrhea?
No.
With no gastrointestinal issues to report, I asked Martin if he had any other contributing factors.
Well, there is one thing. I have got an enormous head, a very big bounce. So there was some trouble in getting a helmet to fit. I don't know if they took out some of the inner band, and I think that added to the stooping and ceiling.
Measuring in at 25 inches, Martin's bonce was bigger than very big. It was large.
So I think even Alec Guinness was impressed.
Alec Guinness was impressed by your bonce?
Yeah, well, Anthony Daniels introduced me to him very kindly.
As the bonce?
No, he didn't mention that.
Laurie and Michael knew each other, but Martin wasn't familiar with either of his clumsy rivals.
Well, I knew there were pretenders, but all I know is it happened to me.
Would you say then that Laurie and Michael are talking at Codswallop?
I wouldn't call it that. I'd just say they're a bit misled.
I left Henley feeling out-poshed and out-Gino'd, yet impressed with Martin's confidence in his claim. But I wondered why, unlike every other Stormtrooper, Ewok and Gonk droid out there, he doesn't do conventions, and there was nothing online connecting him to the film. I didn't know who to believe, and not even Luke Skywalker could help. Just days after my meeting with Martin, I got an email from Laurie and found myself wondering who had died this time, and at what point coincidence becomes a spree. Inside there was just a link, which did nothing to quell my sense of dread.
Who was the Stormtrooper who banged his head? So many claims unsubstantiated.
You know what? I like Laurie. If he didn't exist, I think we'd have to invent him. But this shocked me to my core. I knew that I needed to meet somebody else who was on set that fateful day, someone impartial. In the meantime, though, I'd have to make do with Laurie's mate. Chris claims that the famous Stormtrooper armour was actually based on his body measurements. I was looking forward to meeting the Empire's perfect physical specimen. Aren't you a little short to be Chris Bunn?
That's me in front.
That's you in the front?
Yes. And I'm actually turning around to see what the noise was.
Was it that loud then?
I thought it was a gun.
Really?
The guns wasn't supposed to go off behind me until we actually come out into the big chamber.
It was time to see what Chris knew about his former colleagues of the Empire. This is Martin Reid. Do you recognise Martin Reid?
No. Michael Leader, and was an old friend of mine, yes.
Did he work on Star Wars?
Yes, he did.
Was he a Stormtrooper?
He was a Stormtrooper.
Was he the Stormtrooper who bumped his head?
No.
You seem very sure about that.
He took the helmet off, and I don't remember Michael Leader being there.
Why would someone lie about something like this?
Extra publicity, prestige.
Laurie Good.
Yes.
Chris's verdict wasn't that surprising, but it was to then hear him say that he originally thought it was somebody completely different. Who was that person?
His name was Richard Sidoney.
And why did you think it was him?
I don't know, maybe, I don't know. Laurie told me that it's him, and now I think back on it, it was him.
Has Laurie offered you any incentive to verify his story? Royalties from his song, perhaps?
No.
I know it happened 40-odd years ago, but I'm not sure if Chris really believes it was Laurie or if he's just sticking up for a mate. He says he remembers thinking it was him, but then also says he remembers thinking it was somebody completely different. That somebody was Richard Sidoley, who according to IMDb not only worked on a completely different Star Wars film, but he wasn't even a Stormtrooper. I needed to test Martin and Laurie's claims further, and in a scene too powerful to show, both men agreed to take a polygraph test. But before shizzle gets real, According to a proverb I just made up, if one wants to truly understand a stormtrooper, then one must become one. And that's exactly what this one was going to do. So I headed to Twickenham to meet industrial designer Andrew Ainsworth, who in 1976 made the natural progression of going from producing canoes to stormtroopers. Based on designs by Ralph McQuarrie and sculptures from Liz Moore and Brian Muir, Andrew, aka the Clone Father, ended up producing 50 stormtrooper outfits for the original film, which he still creates and sells commercially to this day.
When you see a picture of stormtroopers on the pavement, that's because that's where we cooled them down and the buses wafted air as they went past them.
Right, okay. It soon transpired that Andrew had a confession to make.
To some extent, I feel I probably have to take a little bit of responsibility for it. I gave them these nice blister eyes in acrylic that made them look very sinister as well. And they were great. And Lucas liked them, everybody liked them. And the first stormtroopers were ordered and the actors couldn't see out of them. They couldn't see where they were going, but the image there was with the blister eyes. So for the extras and the main body of the crew, I replaced the blister eyes with just a sheet of green acetate, filter material. And then they could obviously see where they're going.
So basically, it's all his fault. Nevertheless, I took a look around Andrew's workshop, which has acted like a stormtrooper maternity ward for the last 40 years. So these are the eyes that caused the problems?
I thought they were pretty good, but as you say, they did cause a problem.
Can I have a look? Can I look through them? It's blurry. It's very blurry. If there was a door
Imagine you were
there,
on Mars.
I wouldn't see that door. It's a concussion trap.
This is the original mould.
This is from 1976?
Yeah.
But do you still use this original mould to this day?
Yeah. Every day we have thousands of them. That's what we sell mainly.
How much of the process has changed since 1976?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing at all?
No. Same material, same formulation, same amount of butadiene in the plastic.
Do you ever find yourself humming the Imperial March whilst you work? Start to finish, how long does it take to make a helmet?
I suppose you're talking about 3 or 4 hours. And I think this Stormtrooper as an iconic character is now more recognised in the world than Michelangelo's David. It's a bit presumptuous, but wow. I wouldn't be surprised.
That's quite a claim to make, Andrew.
I'm very proud of the product. It looks great to me still. Even I chuckle at it every time. I think, well, that was not bad for 2 days.
It was time to put myself in my suspect's shoes. And with the help of Andrew's wife, I put on the famous armour that repelled absolutely nothing.
Wow. So that was my first experience ever in my life dressing up as a stormtrooper. I've never had so much attention in my life. No one's interested in normal me. So actually seeing through is okay, but looking left, looking right, looking up, looking down, not so okay. Moving around is awkward, but I imagine maybe you get used to it. You're running through that corridor and you went to duck for a door. That's not easy, because also when you duck, things are digging into your neck, the helmet drops down so the visibility goes there. How's my hair?
Whichever type of helmet it was clear how anyone could have bumped their head in that scene. And Chris Bunnard told me that there was pretty much no audition process or training for the original actors. So to find out what's changed since, I spoke to some First Order Stormtroopers from 2015's The Force Awakens.
We had to go through boot camp. We had military training. Stormtrooper boot camp. There was an ex-military guy who trained us and put us through the motions.
They test your flexibility, your mobility.
Stage combat, a little bit of hand-to-hand combat.
A few people dislocated arms and stuff and had lots of issues and never came back.
Did you at any point try and maybe bump your head on purpose to sort of elevate your Stormtrooper fame?
No.
I didn't bump my head, no.
You didn't bump your head?
If I did, maybe it would have made a movie, eh?
Those helmets limit your vision, so you got to look where you're going. But I'm never wearing one of those again, by the way.
How did you relieve yourself?
In general, you can do a number one, but if you're destined to go, you won't make it in time.
Did you have an accident?
No, not me. But number two, forget it. It's not happening.
I'll ask again. Did you have an accident?
No, I didn't.
I used to think this day would never come. But today I'll be hooking up 2 old men's brains to some electronic equipment. I'll admit I'm a bit surprised, but science must prevail. So I hit the highway to detect some lies. First stop, Lenny Henry's place to wring every last drop of evidence from my surviving troopers. How do you feel about taking a polygraph test?
That's all right.
Done it before?
No, never been in trouble before.
Quite intrigued, actually.
I wondered why Laurie was so reluctant to talk about Michael Leader the last time we met.
I don't want to say anything about Michael Leader.
So I asked him.
When he claimed that he was the stormtrooper that banged his head, I think it was a moment of opportunism. But I didn't want to slag off Michael Leader, because he hasn't slagged me off.
Okay, but now he's dead, free for all. The claim's out there. You've made it. You appear at conventions. Would you therefore say that you've profited from your claim?
Well, a lot of people are interested. Yes, I would say so, yeah.
An opportunist, if ever I've met one.
I always say to people that I can't prove that I'm the one, but I believe 100% it's me.
Martin didn't recognise Laurie, but did Laurie recognise Martin?
I don't recognise the face, and I don't recognise the name.
Till this, why had you not discussed it? Because you don't really do conventions either, do you? Why is that?
I don't do them because, you know, there are other stormtroopers there, and the photograph is not as valid, should we say, as one of the known character like C-3PO or R2-D2. We thought it was just another job. I think I had 2 or 3 days on it. That's all I can remember, 60 quid a day.
Laurie, however, disputed Martin's wage claim, and armed with payslip showed that he'd been a little short change for a stormtrooper.
Rate was £18.90.
I was curious to know where Martin's song was, but I didn't have to ask.
I'm a songwriter myself. It was called Don't Try to Tell Me You Love Me, and it got to number 11 in France.
Would you say then that Laurie and Michael are talking at Codswallop?
I wouldn't call it that. I'd just say they're a bit misled. I knew there were pretenders, but all I know is it happened to me.
I have photographs with my helmet off. Now ask this gentleman if he's got photographs on set with his helmet off to prove that he's actually there.
You could ask him yourself, he's here.
Go on then.
Martin Reid, meet Laurie Good.
Hello, Laurie. How are you?
Right.
Nice to see you.
Nice journey.
Yeah.
Martin?
Yes?
You branded Laurie as misled. Do you still hold that opinion?
Yeah.
Laurie, you poo-pooed Martin's memory of the wages on offer and also your armour.
Did I? Yes. The wages were about under £20 a day.
And Martin, you were paid £60.
Paid £60 a day. I still got a contract.
That's a big difference.
He was a contractor, and he was on the contract.
So this was a different arrangement. Okay.
3 days.
Martin, I played you Laurie's song, and you quickly pointed out that you actually have written a more successful song that placed 11th in the French charts.
Well, it did get to number 11 in the French charts, but I didn't get a penny for that.
Laurie, meanwhile, has had 99 pennies off me. Laurie, you suggested that Martin might never have been on set that day at all, if ever. In fact, you said you'd like to see a photo of Martin, costume on, helmet off.
I said, I've got a photograph of myself with the helmet off, and has Martin got one with a photograph with his helmet off anywhere on the set?
No, I haven't, but I do have a photograph in my ordinary clothes, standing with C-3PO, Anthony Daniels.
On set?
On set, with whom I was at Drama College.
Now, today won't be pretty, gentlemen. I'll turn around, and if either of you have left when I turn back, I'll simply accept that they were a terrible time waster and move on, okay? The atmosphere in the room was hanging heavy, like a big smell. The smell of Stormtrooper musk.
Did anyone say cut when you hit your head?
No, we just finished it, and there was much laughter when I banged my head and said it again.
You were at the went again after you banged your head?
Well, of course, yeah. They wanted to get one without me banging my head, and the first two weren't really good.
So why didn't they?
What happened when you banged your head?
That was the last shot. They didn't do any more shots after
and
that.
Nobody said anything about it?
No one said anything about it.
Well, that's very odd.
So I thought it wasn't wide enough for me to be in frame.
Anything else, gentlemen?
No. I don't think so.
Before reading Martin and Laurie's brains, I spoke to Chief Lie Detective Jason Hubble to try and find out what the funk was going on.
Today we're going to be running something called a directed lie test. We're asking you to lie on a known question, okay, on a known lie, and we are comparing that to the relevant question on whether you were the stormtrooper who hit his head in that scene. I'm testing your blood pressure, I'm testing your breathing, sweat gland activity, I'm testing your blood flow.
So why am I sitting on a mat? What does the bomb tell you?
The mat is a movement sensor. Well done. The mat is there to make sure that you're not cheating. Okay? Yeah, we don't actually take any results from that. It's there for me to make sure that you're not doing anything that you shouldn't be doing.
So I'm just going to warn you, Laurie's bum gets busy.
Okay.
But can it be beaten? Could you cheat the system? You obviously understand the science and the technology. Could you cheat it?
No.
Really?
No, I've tried. You have to have a sense of jeopardy. You have to have a sense of loss to polygraphs. It's not a pub trick.
The test involves 3 rounds of pre-agreed questions that our suspects answer with a mix of truth and lies to give a baseline reading of their body's reactions.
Are the lights on in this room?
Yes. In your whole life, have you ever made a mistake?
No.
And at the end of each round, the quizmaster fires the all-important question.
Were you the stormtrooper who hit his head in the photo shown?
Yes. Were you the stormtrooper who hit his head in the photo shown?
Yes.
3 rounds later, and it was time to open the envelope of truth. Martin, I can reveal that you're not my father. And you also passed the polygraph test. Congratulations, Martin. How does that feel?
I feel vindicated.
Told me adamantly, I know this is me. And passed his polygraph test.
Next came Laurie.
How did it go? I'm intrigued.
Well, I can tell you that Martin Reid passed his test.
Did he?
He passed his test.
Yeah.
Are you surprised by that?
Yes.
Laurie, good. I can reveal that you failed the polygraph test.
Really?
You failed the polygraph test. I'm really sorry.
Something's gone wrong there.
Deceptive, 99.21%. Polygraph is not saying it's him.
Do you still 100% believe that you were the
I
stormtrooper?
believe it's me. I believe I'm the stormtrooper in my head, yes.
Do you think the environment got to you a little bit?
I think so, yeah. It's an important thing for me, you see, because Martin hasn't done conventions, I've done conventions, and I suppose I had too much importance in it in myself, thinking about the result, really. And Martin, what's his name, Reid?
Martin Reid.
Has passed?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
If Laurie had a second chance, do you think he'd pass?
Wouldn't change. Genuinely believe he doesn't think it was him.
Giving Laurie that result last night was probably the hardest thing I've done in my career. He really wants this. He sent me a message this morning, nobody's died, but he did want to say that he's on medication that he thinks might have impacted the result of his test. Now, he doesn't want me to say what it is on camera, but the examiners have denied that it can affect the result of a polygraph. So yesterday clearly goes in Martin's favour, but I'm really not sure how conclusive these tests are. To have any chance of solving this geeky mystery, I needed to find somebody neutral who worked on that scene. So I headed to London Film and Comic Con, where I managed to bag myself some time with George Lucas's former right-hand man, legendary producer Gary Kurtz.
The Stormtrooper hit its head, and we did another take after that, but in the end, in the editing room, we decided to go ahead and use it. That either no one would notice, or if they did notice, it would just be one of those minor things that people talked about. It was the best take in terms of the speed in which the Stormtroopers came out, and energy-wise, it definitely was the best. There's no question about that. Sometimes you use those takes where you might have minor imperfections, but emotionally or energetically, they work best.
So you were aware it happened at the time?
Yeah, we were.
For me at least, this was breaking news. Seeing as George Lucas only added the sound effect in a 2004 DVD re-release, I always assumed the bump went unnoticed at the time.
Talked about redoing it and decided, number one, we didn't have enough time, and number two, didn't think it was that critical.
Did you ever think it would become this famous?
No. There were a certain group of extras that we used for Stormtroopers regularly, so they were on call when we needed Stormtroopers. Most of the days we might have 6 or 8 of them, and there were certain days, like in the big hangar bay sequences, when we'd have 40 or 50. But on most days there were never more than 6 or 8 that could be used in various scenes, and we tended to call back the same people. So I think I recognize, after all this time, all of the faces.
Gary opened his heart, mind and contacts book, and during the next couple of mins, which is short for minutes, you will hear from 2 of his former assistant directors who worked on the scene, which by the way Lucas was absent from, so I therefore rejected his kind offer to be interviewed. Time waster.
I didn't even know it happened.
Really? So when was the first time you heard about it?
When you mentioned it.
Are you surprised to be having this conversation?
I am amazed that anyone's interested in a stormtrooper hitting his head on a door. We're so tight on money on the film and tight on schedule that we would have just done the shot and moved on.
I just remember being on the stage that day, and I remember somebody doing it, and I think the crew gave a laugh after the shot. But it's a vague recollection, but I didn't realise it actually ended up in the movie. It just shows you how closely we watched the movie when it came out. I can't remember how many takes we did. I mean, I think we only ever went around about 4 times, 5 times on a take.
Do you recognise any of these names? Martin Reid.
I don't recognise Martin Reid's name, no.
Laurie Good.
I know the name Laurie Good, but I can't put a face to it.
Michael Leader.
Michael Leader I knew very well.
But could you pinpoint the incident to him, therefore?
No, I couldn't pinpoint it to any of them.
After investigating for years, months, and countless consecutive and non-consecutive days,
No.
Never seen him. This is what I've learned about my suspects. First up, Michael Leader, the man who wouldn't talk. He's widely recognised as being a stormtrooper by the crew, credited by the press as being the one who bumped his head. And a psychic medium even told me it was him. But then he did hang up on me. I guess who could blame him? But if it really was him, then why didn't he want to talk? Laurie Good, the Stormtrooper. Chris Bunn thinks it was Laurie. Rebel soldier actor Mark Kirby also told me that he thinks it was him. He's written a song, shown me payslips, has photos on set, and is a regular at conventions. But could that be an ulterior motive? He also massively failed the polygraph test. Martin Reid and his big bonds. He passed his polygraph test. In 1976 at least, he was taller than Laurie at 6 foot. He's still got it in the head department. But there's nothing online connecting him to the film, and he also couldn't provide any payslips, photographs, contracts, etc. Having worn the outfit myself, I think it's fair to say that they all probably bumped their head at some point. But it's time to decide which one did it in that scene. I had a pretty good idea of who I thought it was, but to help me come to a final conclusion, I decided to put together a jury, consisting of Chris Jericho and his Fozzie bandmate Rich Ward, motion capture pioneer Ahmed Best, Snap Wexley himself, Greg Grunberg, and pop culture expert Kevin Smith, as well as 20 of my favourite pop culture YouTubers, podcasters, journalists and cosplayers. Members of the jury, Do you promise to give a true verdict as according to the evidence that's been presented to you?
Yes, we do.
I do.
No. Yes, of course.
The truest verdict.
Well, in that case, the time has come. Members of the jury, please tell me who you're voting for and why.
I'm going with Laurie Good. He has some corroboration. The lead stormtrooper that was in front of him remembers it being him. He has pay stubs saying that he was paid as an extra.
Martin Reid. Number one, he's not really big on the convention circuit, right? So he has nothing to gain. But the thing that sets him apart, other than the fact of being alive and able to talk to, is the second take.
I have to go with Martin on this. The AD is the thing that really kind of locks it in for me. I don't believe that this was the last take. Just as an actor, from the stuff I've been through, I don't believe it. I also love the fact that he passed the polygraph test.
I'm going to go with Michael Leader, who is no longer with us. I like the taking the truth to the grave. So the fact that Michael Leader, A, would not talk to Jamie, refused to mention anything about it, and the fact he died without ever giving out the truth. It's like all these years of thespianism, he screws up, hits his head on the overhang, and becomes infamous in cinematic history. Of course he's not going to want to admit it, and he's going to take that secret to him, that horrible embarrassment, all the way to the grave.
I'm going to go with Michael Leader as my choice. The Stormtrooper wanted it too much. I don't think the two gentlemen are willfully lying. What did we know from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? It wasn't the ornate cup, right? Chalice. It was the tiny ass like wooden cup that you would have passed over. He is the Grail. So this was a guy who's just like, hey man, I was in some goofy space movie and I hit my head. I don't even want to talk about it. So never really interacted with it, embraced it. You know, not like me where I'm like, I got a fan, I show up at their house, give them head and stuff. Like he was an extra, he's on the EastEnders for heaven's sakes. And that to him is not a whimsical moment like it is for all of us. I say it's Michael.
There was strong support so far for all of my suspects, with the final votes about to drop. The jury swayed towards the retired sea captain from Henley, and whilst I took all of the arguments on board, the result confirmed my belief that Martin is the trooper I've been looking for. Here's why. It was difficult for me to really believe it could be Michael, as I didn't get to speak to him properly, and I don't take rejection very well. But to be honest, I never completely ruled him out. For a long time I believed it was Laurie. He definitely wants it the most. And the polygraph result, that didn't really bother me too much. It was when I spoke to Gary and the crew members, that's when I started to turn to the Martin side. As Greg and Ahmed said, the second take after the bump is key, as verified by Gary Kurtz.
The Stormtrooper hit its head and we did another take after that.
That was the last shot. They didn't do any more shots after.
Whilst Martin said there was a second take.
They went again after you banged your head.
Well, of course, yeah.
Martin also mentioned laughter after the bump.
There was much laughter when I banged my head.
Which matches the account of second AD Terry Madden.
I think the crew gave a laugh after the shot.
And Terry actually contacted me again and said that the clapper loader also remembers a laugh at the time. And also, thinking back to Martin's initial email, he name-checked to Terry and Tony as working on that scene. Now we know that Terry definitely did, and Anthony, even though we can't remember, he was often credited as Tony in the film industry. But despite all that, there was still one thing niggling at me about Martin. Did he actually work on the film? I know it seems ridiculous to say that now, but it is the one thing that the other two can 100% actually prove. However, Anthony C-3PO Daniels did confirm to me in one form of communication that Martin did work on the film.
Martin Reid was in it, yeah.
Martin Reid was a Stormtrooper.
That's right, yeah, and I'd actually forgotten that, yeah, great guy.
So like Newton discovering gravity, and Bowie discovering spiders on Mars, I believe that we finally discovered that Martin Reid is the true galactic idiot. I'm Jamie Stangroom, and this was The Empire Strikes Door. Thank you for watching The Empire Strikes Door and somehow making it all the way to the end. Let me know in the comments who you think it was, And if you're new here, then I do kind of regular interviews, podcasts, location videos, and I'll soon be uploading some bonus Empire Strikes Door content, like behind the scenes videos and extra theories and thoughts from all of the jury members.